Hello and welcome to the Dot Connector on iconic.com. Well, I'm going to talk this week about the cult of Trump. And how appropriate I should be reading the book this week. It's by a guy called Steven Hassan. And his background is that he was in the Moonies cult, the Unification Church, and a long time ago, and became programmed by it. And after he went through a period of deprogramming, he became a psychologist specializing in freeing people's minds from destructive cults. So that's the background he's coming from. And so let's have a look at what he says. See if you see any parallels. He says, cult leaders demand loyalty and obedience, and their word must be the final truth. None there then. They seek to control the thoughts, behavior, and emotions of their followers. Hassan says the cult leaders are narcissists, and even the more extreme, what he calls malignant narcissists. And they tend to have, one, grandiose, self-centered behavior. And what you see is people like Trump talking in superlatives. Everything is the greatest. Never seen anything like it before. This is historic, and so on. Number two, fantasies of power, success, and attractiveness. A need for praise and admiration. Have you seen these clips of him in cabinet meetings where they allow the media in for a bit? And you've got these members of the cabinet in these various subject areas. And when they're asked to make their contribution, it's like a bloody eulogy to God. Extraordinary to watch. It's all about the God King and how wonderful it is to serve the God King. It's pathetic. So yes, there's a parallel there. Sense of entitlement, never accept you were wrong about anything. And also a lack of empathy, which can lead the cult leader to exploit, bully, shame, and demean others without guilt or remorse. But interestingly, and I've noticed this about Trump, underneath this personality type that Hassan is talking about, the bombastic, out there, I'm the greatest, is very low self-esteem, because the bombast is a cover for that. And low self-esteem and feelings of inferiority and emptiness. Many cult leaders, he says, have experienced loveless childhoods, and that's what Trump experienced with an absent mother and an authoritarian father. So as you go through the traits of cult leaders, it's clear that Trump, and what I'm talking about, the extreme end of MAGA, tick all the boxes. And when I talk about the extreme end of MAGA being a cult, the extreme end of woke's a bloody cult as well, in the same way. So Hassan says the following about the cult leader foundation trait of lying. He says, deception is the lifeblood of the destructive cult. Members are recruited and indoctrinated through lies and trickery. Lying has other intrinsic benefits for cult leaders. It creates confusion, which disrupts people's stable mental framework and makes them susceptible to the indoctrination process. Cult leaders use a variety of confusion techniques, but a major one is delivering a dizzying amount of information, much of it contradictory and false. Well, that's big time the case with the Mafia Don, so that it overloads and overwhelms critical thinking. When overloaded and confused, people tend to doubt their ability to distinguish truth from lies, right from wrong. Fundamentally, their sense of identity is left uncertain, giving the cult leader an opportunity to inculcate a new set of beliefs, feelings, and behaviors. A confused person can be easily manipulated and controlled. And this is an important one. People who confront the cult leader with contradictory information, regardless of it being factual, are punished or even banished for speaking the truth. And if we come to recent events, well, that's obviously the case with Trump and the Trump cult. Because while you're eulogizing him and telling him everything he wants to hear, you're fine. But you challenge him even mildly, and he turns in an instant. We've seen this with Tucker Carlson recently when he was pushing back on the bombing of Iran, and he called him cookie, did Trump, when he questioned that involvement. So the interesting thing is, not only did Trump come out against Carlson and anyone else in the MAGA media who was questioning the sanity of getting involved in bombing Iran, but so many in the MAGA also came out against them, which is what you would expect in a cult. That's how it works. And here's one of them who was pushing back and got the treatment as a result. Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she's speaking here after Trump ordered the bombing of Iran.
You know, I didn't sleep better after neocons and warmongers talked this administration into entering a hot war that Israel started after Netanyahu barely won a vote, Steve, barely won a vote by 2 votes in order to stay in power the day before Israel attacked, an unprovoked attack, Iran. Now, I'm not making apologies for Iran. I have no investment in the terrorist regime of Iran. But the reality is no American slept better after America bombed Iran, because all of a sudden we now have threats on our homeland. We now have warnings from our State Department for Americans overseas. Qatar put out a warning to Americans to shelter in place. Americans in Israel are terrified for their lives, as well as the Israeli people are terrified for their lives because bombs have been falling in Israel. And and Americans all over the world are seriously questioning, is this going to be World War III? So no, I didn't sleep better, regardless of Mark Levin's silly name calling. And I don't think any American is sleeping better after this, Steve.
But it seems the MAGA are largely back in the fold now. If what you believe in terms of what Trump said about Tucker Carlson, he's apologized to him for going too far. We've had Dave Smith, the comedian, who I talked about in last week's Dot Connector. After the bombing of Iran, Dave Smith was calling for Trump to be impeached, but he's kind of easing off that now, it seems, and they're all coming back in the fold, which is what you'd expect in a cult. Not all of them, but most of them. So I just want to highlight one guy who, whatever Trump posts, this guy agrees with it. He's a guy called Charlie Kirk. He's a MAGA, quote, influencer. And whatever Trump says, he's supporting it. And given that Trump changes his mind every few minutes, so does Charlie Kirk. No new wars, says Trump, until there are new wars, and then Kirk's on board. And don't get involved in bombing Iran, and then Trump does, and now Trump's a genius for doing it. But this is the best one this week. Trump provided the weapons for Israel to attack Iran. He provided the support in the background for that, plus protecting Israel from Iranian missiles. Then he bombs Iran on behalf of America. And then, because there's a ceasefire that followed that, and I'll come to the real reason for that in a second, Charlie Kirk calls for Trump to get the Nobel Peace Prize. I kid you bloody not. It's the sycophant's sycophancy. The sycophant's sycophant. And here's Charlie Kirk. Of course, as always, he knows no other way, singing from the song sheet.
Joining me now is Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk. Charlie, I truly don't think I'm being hyperbolic. I don't think I'm exaggerating. I think that when you look at this objectively, what's been accomplished in the last 24 hours and over the first 120 days, there hasn't been a more consequential presidency. And in the last 24 hours, Charlie, that's happened despite doubts and pulls, not just from the expected left, but on the right as well, about what would be the definition of MAGA. And what we learned is it will be defined by President Trump, and that will be successful.
That's exactly right. And you're spot on, Will. I'll tell you, President Donald Trump, he demonstrated a masterclass these last couple of days. Think about it. No nukes for Iran, which is something he's been talking about for well over 20 years. But also he did it with no boots on the ground, no endless war, no U.S. troops being killed, no nation building. So President Trump was able to go through every single component of this. He didn't need multiple trillions of dollars and 2 decades of trying to change the hearts and minds of people on the ground. He did it by using diplomacy first and then strength where necessary. And then he wraps it all up with a quick peace deal, forcefully inserting himself and saying enough. We took out the nuclear program. This is not about regime change. This is not about a 12-year war. This is a 12-day war. We're on the side of civilization. We're on the side of Israel. In no way, shape, or form or capacity should we allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon.
Okay, so let's cut through the crap and the lies and the spin and see what this whole ceasefire thing was all about. They say it's because Iran's ability to produce a nuclear weapon is now destroyed, thanks to the American military and Israel. And Trump and Netanyahu have said that they agreed to the ceasefire because Iran's nuclear weapons potential has been eliminated, like kaput, gone. But there's another way of looking at this, and that's that Israel and Trump had their own reasons for wanting the conflict to end, at least for now. Here's a intelligence report from the Pentagon. The headline is, early U.S. intel assessment suggests strikes on Iran did not destroy nuclear sites, sources say. The U.S. military strikes on 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities last weekend did not destroy the core components of the country's nuclear program and likely only set it back by months. according to an early U.S. intelligence assessment that was described by 7 people briefed on it. And the other thing is, I mean, how long has Trump been telegraphing the targeting of Iran and the bombing of Iran? Of course, they knew it was coming. So, he's going to bomb here and he's going to bomb there and he's going to bomb there. So we'll just leave our nuclear enrichment facilities where they are. We're not going to move it or anything to somewhere they don't know about, or at least is not somewhere that is obvious. It's crazy. Of course they were going to take action knowing what was coming. So it says the assessment, which has not been previously reported, was produced by the Defense Intelligence Agency. That's the Pentagon's intelligence arm. It's based on a battle damage assessment conducted by U.S. Central Command in the aftermath of the U.S. strikes, one of the sources said. The analysis of the damage to the sites and the impact of the strikes on Iran's nuclear ambitions is ongoing and could change as more intelligence becomes available. I wonder if more intelligence will become available to the Trump regime. I do hope so. But the early findings are at odds with President Donald Trump's repeated claims that the strikes completely and totally obliterated, superlatives as always, Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth also said on Sunday that Iran's nuclear ambitions have been obliterated. 2 of the people familiar with the assessment said Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium was not destroyed. One of the people said the centrifuges are largely intact. Another source said that the intelligence assessed enriched uranium was moved out of the sites prior to the U.S. strikes. You don't say. I'm shocked. And that's the other thing, you know. Have you noticed this theme where the Trump regime tells Iran it's going to bomb them, and then when Iran retaliated, bombing the base in Qatar, Iran told America that it was going to do that. I mean, what's all that about? Strange, lots of strange things involved in all this. Anyway, so the DIA assessment is that the US set them back maybe a few months tops, this person said. The White House acknowledged the existence of the assessment, but said they disagreed with it. Well, of course they did. And White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told CNN the leaking of this alleged assessment is a clear attempt to demean President Trump and discredit the brave fighters who conducted the mission. So the latest I hear, as I'm recording this, is that the Defense Secretary, Hegseth, is going to reveal, apparently today, this is the Thursday, irrefutable facts about the success of the bombing. So we'll see what he comes up with. And I'm sure Mossad is working on that evidence as I speak. And Trump says that he's doing this to fight for the dignity of our great American pilots. No, he's doing it to fight for the dignity of the cover story. And if we move on to Israel, Israel said they agreed to a ceasefire because they removed Iran's dual immediate existential threat of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles. Well, first of all, there's no proof of the ending of the nuclear ambitions, even if Iran had them. And of course, Trump's head of intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, said only in March there was no evidence that Iran was seeking to build a nuclear weapon. But then you have this whole idea of we wanted to take out their ballistic missiles. And then after saying that, Israel accused Iran of firing another ballistic missile at them. So go figure that one. And this is Professor Ori Goldberg. He's an Israeli political analyst and specialist in Iranian affairs. And he says the whole thing, the attack on Iran and all that followed, was basically pointless and a waste of time.
I think it's somewhat ridiculous, especially the stressing of the goals of the operation. It is really unclear, and that is to say the least, what Israel's goals were. I mean, over the past week, we've heard Israel talk about everything from the decapitation of the nuclear program to regime change. Yesterday, the day before, were spent bombing what Israel called symbols of the regime in Tehran, said absolutely nothing about the nuclear program. It's still completely unclear whether Iran's stockpile of fissionable material was hurt during the American attacks on Fordow and the other facilities. True, there's been damage to facilities, but it's not clear what has been done. And let's go back a little bit and remember that nothing had essentially changed in the situation between Iran and Israel. There was never an imminent, inevitable threat. This was a decision that through and through was made on the basis of political considerations, mostly domestic, some of them foreign, but all of them having to do with Gaza and not with an imminent threat from Tehran. So the statement trying to spin Israel's position at the moment after a very difficult morning here in Israel, the statement, I find it to be ridiculous at best.
Well, the other thing, as Goldberg mentioned there, is that Israeli cities were hit by Iranian missiles like never before. And this Iron Dome defense system provided by the American taxpayer proved to be less than iron. And a lot of these missiles got through. And also, Israel was apparently running out of these interceptor missiles that this dome uses to protect the country. And therefore, it was in the interests of Israel to call a halt and a ceasefire, not least so they can restock. But also, as someone rightly said, Israel never agrees to a ceasefire anytime unless it suits them and it's for their benefit. So there's been a lot of censorship on the public seeing the damage in Israel, the public around the world. But here's some that we have been able to see.
Iranian strikes began within hours of the U.S. joining the conflict. The damage is extensive, with sites in and around Haifa and Tel Aviv being bombed.
We were in the center of Israel, center division of Israel. A missile fire hit right inside of a building complex behind me.
So all that must have come as quite a shock to the Israeli regime. And you can see why they wanted to call a halt to it, if only temporarily, while they restock their defensive interceptor missiles. And Steve Bannon, who is a Trump supporter and was an aide to Trump in his first term, he picked up this reason for the ceasefire as well.
Yesterday they took this ceasefire was as much to save Israel. That's the hidden story here. They bit off way more than they could chew. They were played out as far. Yesterday was a brutal day for the citizens of Israel. Took horrible incomings, particularly in Tel Aviv, and I guess Beersheba also. They needed this because they were running out of defensive ammunition. And President Trump stepped in there with the help of Qatar. Look, we've come a long way since 7 years ago when Qatar, would not work with us on stopping the financing of Islamic terrorism, the financing of it. And they come a long way. They've stepped in the middle of the situation in Gaza, and they stepped in the middle here, and President Trump is going out of his way to praise them. And he's not going out of his way to praise Netanyahu's government, which I think is getting to be an issue.
And for Trump, things were also getting out of hand. You had the MAGA base at war with itself, at least at the influencer level. And you had the attacks by Iran, symbolic as they may have been, on the airbase, the American airbase in Qatar. And there was a possibility that this very much could escalate. And so it was in Trump's interest as well to put an end to it. And also, there was the potential for Iran to close the Strait of Hormuz with potentially catastrophic consequences for the shipment of oil from the Gulf around the world. But hey, no, none of that is true. Trump's a hero. He was playing 5D chess, and he should get the Nobel Peace Prize for stopping a war that he and Israel started. Well done. So Bannon said there that Israel is an issue, and it is a bloody issue. Israel controls the United States, and a stream of other countries come to that. And the funding that Trump has received in his election campaigns from Israel sources is absolutely fantastic. They own him. And when you see this, he's fallen out with Netanyahu. Well, interestingly, just a few weeks ago, we had that line. He's fallen out with Netanyahu, and, Netanyahu, oh dear, the relationship's in trouble. And then Trump supports the Israeli attacks on Iran and then supports them with US bombing. And now, oh no, it's all gone sour. Israel owns him, and he'll do in the end what Israel says. He always has. So, yeah, Bannon says there's an issue with Israel. There is. This is the issue. People voting for Trump, but getting Netanyahu. And not only him, getting Trump funder Miriam Adelson, the ultra Zionist. The issue is that Netanyahu sits in Trump's head and directs his foreign policy for this second term and owns almost everyone on Capitol Hill through funding by Israel through its American arm, AIPAC. And here's a really telling moment this week when the Pentagon spokesperson, Tammy Bruce, yet another Fox News contributor, made it clear what her priorities are when it comes to America or Israel.
The pride of being able to be here and do work that facilitates making things better for people, and in the greatest country on earth, next to Israel. It's an honor to be able to make a difference and to be able to speak in this regard with an administration that I love so much and that I feel genuinely represented by. It's a real honor.
Next to Israel says it all, and that is the mentality that runs the American government, and pretty much not just under Trump, although he's an extreme version of it, but under the Democrats as well. And it's not just America. This is a story from this week. Israel lobby funded half of Keir Starmer's cabinet. Pro-Israel lobbyists have donated to 13 out of Labour's 25 cabinet members since they were first elected to Parliament, Declassified can reveal. The list of recipients includes Prime Minister Keir Starmer, his deputy Angela Rayner, Chancellor Rachel Reeves, Foreign Secretary David Lammy. Foreign Secretary takes money from Israel sources, and Home Secretary Yvette Cooper. Jonathan Reynolds, who will oversee arms exports to Israel as UK Trade Secretary, is another beneficiary alongside Labour's election mastermind Pat McFadden, whose responsibilities now include national security. Some of the donations were provided by Labour Friends of Israel, the LFI, a lobby group which takes MPs on fact-finding missions to Israel and the region. Fact-finding missions means they are given the propaganda. Reeves, McFadden, Reynolds, and Technology Secretary Peter Kyle were recently listed as vice chairs of the Labour Friends of Israel. Other major funders include pro-Israel businessmen Trevor Chin and Stuart Roden. The total value of donations amounts to over £300,000. The Labour Friends of Israel does not disclose its funders. You do surprise me. But it was revealed during an undercover Al Jazeera documentary in 2017 to have close relations with the Israeli embassy in London. What are people in politics doing taking money from Israel when they're supposed to be impartial? Why does AIPAC fund the great majority of people on Capitol Hill? Because they like them. To get what they want, of course. It's everywhere. And here's another story from this week to give you a feeling of where that money is coming from and what it's really funding. Quit the regime in 12 hours or you and your family are next, Mossad tells Iranian generals. Israel's shadowy intelligence agency, Mossad, threatened Iranian generals and their families with imminent assassination if they did not quit the Ayatollah's regime, it's been revealed. The country launched its first wave of strikes on Iran on June the 13th, targeting military leaders and top nuclear scientists. And in the hours after the first wave, intelligence operatives from Mossad began a covert campaign to intimidate and destabilize Tehran's regime by calling them on their personal mobile phones. The Washington Post reported that Persian-speaking Mossad agents called over 20 senior officials in Tehran and told them that they and their families would be killed if they did not renounce the rule of this Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader. One Israeli operative reportedly told a senior general, quote, "I can advise you now, you have 12 hours to escape with your wife and child. Otherwise, you're on our list right now." He reportedly added, "We're closer to you than your own neck vein. Put this in your head. May God protect you." This is the psychopathy. This is the brutality, the cold, calculated brutality that you are taking money from politicians of the world. This general, who the newspaper did not name, was told he had just 12 hours to make a video denouncing the regime. He reportedly seemed willing to go through with the plan at the time, asking the Mossad agent, "How should I send it to you?" It's not currently clear if the general ever made the video, though the Washington Post reported that the man is believed to be still alive and in Iran. The Mossad psychological warfare operation doesn't appear to have deterred Iran, which is just as well, given its incessant and constant. It's unbelievable. You know, I'm banned from 30 European countries and Australia for pointing this out since 1994-95. You know, anyone that wanted to do some research into this knows the pure evil that is driving the Israeli regime, and it owns Trump, and it owns America, and it owns the Starmer government, and goodness knows how many besides. And look at the number of wars, the number of dead people that Israel has instigated. Not just by its own violence, but how it's manipulated upheavals in other countries covertly. So these are the psychopaths that control Trump and his regime. And Trump bombs a country and then thanks God and tells God how much he loves him. This is a Trump who has no connection whatsoever to Christianity, but uses it because his MAGA base is into Christianity. And that's the only reason. So the God that Trump loves must be Yahweh then, the God of Israel.
God, I want to just say we love you, God, and we love our great military. Protect them. God bless the Middle East. God bless Israel. And God bless America. Thank you very much.
It's pathetic to watch. And this is pathetic too. He bombs Iran. He supports Israel in its mass slaughter genocide in Gaza. He avoids the draft to Vietnam while the kids of the non-privileged were sent to this manufactured war in Vietnam, and then posts on his social media this video that seems to find it funny when you bomb another country. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the President of the United States running a cult which, at least at the extreme end, is called MAGA. And where it goes from here, well, who can tell? Anything is possible. And now for subscribers to Iconic, we'll have the rest of the dot connector, and I'm going to start with that Gaza story. Horrible. Israel disappeared almost 400,000 people in Gaza, half of them children, says report. A new report published via the Harvard Dataverse reveals that at least 377,000 people in Gaza have been disappeared by the Israeli military since October 2023, with half of that number believed to be children. The report, authored by Israeli professor Yaakov Garb, uses data-driven analysis and spatial mapping to examine how Israeli attacks on civilians and the obstruction of aid have led to a dramatic drop in the enclave's population. According to Garb's findings, the actual number of people killed may be far higher than the official death toll, which currently stands at around 61,000. Well, all you've really got to do to get the magnitude of what's gone on is to realize that since October 2023, and here we are not far away from coming round to that month in 2025, that in that period, Gaza has been incessantly bombed by these psychopathic lunatics. And aid, food, has been systematically prevented from circulating, right to present day. Put all that together, and it's no surprise the numbers that are being talked about here. And says maps in the report, based on Israeli military estimates, indicate that the remaining population in Gaza City is around 1 million, with 500,000 in Moazi, and 350,000 in central Gaza, totaling approximately 1.85 million. But before the war, Gaza's population was estimated at 2.227 million. The discrepancy points to at least 377,000 people now unaccounted for. How many are under the rubble that's not yet been moved? While some may be displaced or missing, the scale of the gap has led analysts to conclude that a significant number are likely dead, suggesting the real death toll could be many times higher. The report also critically assesses the role of the US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. What a contradiction in terms, arguing that its structure appears to have been shaped more by Israeli military strategy than by humanitarian means. But if you are programmed from birth to believe that Palestinians are vermin, then why would you care what happened to them? God is on your side, right? Not theirs. Using location data and spatial analysis, Garb finds that most of Gaza's population is unable to reach these aid compounds, and the sites were largely inaccessible, cut off from the southern areas of Gaza by the Israeli-controlled Netzarim corridor. And their location inside declared buffer zones meant that civilians seeking aid had to enter areas formerly barred to them by the Israeli army. It's systematic to create starvation. And Palestinians, even at the aid centers, have been shot by the IDF. So we are dealing, I'm not talking about Jewish people in general, but we are dealing here in pure, undiluted evil. And it controls the United States and Britain. On and on. So what's been obscured by happenings between Iran and Israel in the last 2 weeks is that Israel's murder of the Palestinians in Gaza has continued. And this is a report on just the happenings of one morning in Gaza.
Yes, it's something to bear in mind that while our attention has been focused almost entirely on the Israel-Iran conflict over the past week, the military action continues on the ground and in the air above Gaza, and Palestinian lives have been lost every day this week, either in airstrikes or different incidents. There are particularly these incidents at aid distribution centres where Israeli soldiers have opened fire on the crowds and killed Palestinians who've been queuing for food, and that has happened again this morning. 23 Palestinians have been killed at one of those aid distribution centres run by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. There are airstrikes across Gaza as well. At least 11 Palestinians killed this morning in an Israeli airstrike. That sort of military action is continuing to take Palestinian life in Gaza.
What did they say after Nazi Germany? We'd never let it happen again. It's happening before our eyes. And the UK government is leaping to the defense of Palestinians. Palestine Action to be banned as terror group, Home Secretary says. The activist group will be prescribed by the government, meaning supporting or being a member of the organization, Palestine Action, will be illegal. It comes after activists broke into RAF Brize Norton and damaged aircraft. I'll come to those aircraft in a second. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper said the disgraceful attack on Brize Norton, on what was the latest in a long history of unacceptable criminal damage committed by Palestine Action, She said a draft prescription order will be laid in Parliament next week, and if passed, it will make it illegal to be a member of or invite support for Palestine Action. And it could lead to prison sentences of up to 14 years for some offenses and fines for others. Now, I'm not supporting, attacks on planes and all the rest of it. But when you think what Palestine is doing in Gaza and what Israel is doing in Gaza, rather, and when you see what they've done in Iran, and yet it's not a prescribed organization in Britain to pledge support for Israel and the Israeli government and what it's doing. It's a prescribed organization now for pushing back on it. And, it just shows you the scale of control that the Israeli networks have in the countries of the West, not only the countries of the West either. But here's that story. Dystopia UK, genocidal RAF squadron targeted by Palestine Action is owned by a hedge fund. This is a story written by Craig Murray. He is a former British ambassador who went rogue when he saw what was going on. And he writes this: if you thought RAF jets were owned by the RAF jets owned by the RAF, isn't that a gimme? No. Think again, he says. The RAF squadron targeted for a repaint by Palestine Action due to its involvement in supplying Israel's genocide does not, in fact, belong to the RAF at all. It belongs ultimately to Polygon Global Partners, LLP, a hedge fund. And, just as an aside there, it's typical, isn't it? You can be carrying out genocide and get away with it, but pushing back on genocide gets you prescribed as a terrorist organization by the UK government. Through a chain of 7 cutout companies, Murray goes on, which I'll take you through, and you can see the story on davidicke.com, the full story. The direct ownership is with Air Tanker Limited, which gives its address as RAF Rise Norton. It owns, maintains, and operates the RAF's Voyager refueling aircraft, which have been providing mid-air refueling to the Israeli Defense Forces, as well as carrying in their cargo role munitions to the IDF. Note that Air Tanker Limited, Murray says, states that 5 of the Voyager aircraft, while available to the RAF, quote, can also be made available to other parties. This can include providing military capability to other nations, end quote. Whether the aircraft have been operated by the RAF on behalf of the Israelis, Murray says, or whether they have been provided to the IDF direct is an interesting question. Is this designed to build a plausible deniability, he asks, for the UK government? 8 of the Voyager aircraft, though fully painted in RAF livery, actually are the property of Air Tanker Limited. It's not plain whether the other 6 also are the property of Air Tanker Limited, but only occasionally used by the RAF. whether they're in RAF livery as well. The company does not show any photographs of jets that are not in RAF livery. And he goes on to go through these various companies that lead back to this hedge fund. And you know, when you do the research into who owns what, you do find these chains where a company that you first get to is owned by another company, is owned by another company, and eventually you get to who owns the lot. Extraordinary what goes on behind the scenes. This is also extraordinary. You remember that story where a lady called Lucy Connolly was imprisoned by the Starmer government, if you can call it that, for making a tweet in the wake of the Southport murder of those little girls. And, well, Lucy Connolly, a Northampton childminder, was jailed for, as the story says, an exorbitant 31 months for that. So I recall she deleted the tweet pretty quickly. But it didn't matter. Because Starmer was coming in to try to intimidate people into silence over things he wanted them to be silenced about. But what this story is detailing is how Lucy Connolly has been appallingly treated in prison by prison officers. And it's just a horrible story. She was demonized as the Tory councillor's racist wife. And she became Sir Keir Starmer's political prisoner, this story says in the Telegraph. She was made an example of to deter others from speaking out on illegal migration and to distract from the government's own failure to provide information that they held about the mass murderer in Southport, which experts say could have prevented the riots that Lucy Connolly was accused of inciting, but didn't really. She was, quote, manhandled by officers and forcibly moved to what's called the Bronx, a wing at the prison in Peterborough for violent offenders. She was petrified, says her husband Ray. It comes to something when a senior British politician has to visit a person in prison, not to show his support, but to try to protect her against further harm. And the guy he's talking about is Richard Tice, deputy leader of Reform UK. He met Lucy Connolly at Peterborough this week, and he was appalled by what he found, where she was manhandled by 6 prison officers to a wing which houses the most violent and dangerous prisoners. She was jailed for making a tweet. And 5 days after the incident, the bruises from the handcuffs on Lucy Connolly's wrists are still significant and yellow. It was obviously horrible what she went through. And it describes this story, how they forced handcuffs on her and treated her in extraordinarily violent ways. And all she is in jail for a tweet. And this is significant here. Since November, Lucy has been entitled to apply for temporary leave on license with her daughter, Holly, who is apparently struggling without her mum, and has been suspended several times from school, Holly, where she vents her distress. And despite repeated requests and well-argued letters to the governor, Lucy has not been granted release on temporary license or home detention curfew wearing a tag. How can a woman of previously impeccable character, a childminder with glowing references from several immigrant parents who committed one, quote, hate crime, be denied those elements of rehabilitation normally considered so essential in a civilized society? Why? Because she is a political prisoner. That's why. Now, there's evidence, still more evidence, of gathering consequences for the COVID fake vaccine, with a new survey of funeral directors, coroners, and embalmers that has uncovered horrific blood clots that have been found in the deceased since the COVID jab began to circulate. You remember that the British funeral director, John O'Looney, alerted people to this, and more in his profession have come out since. And this survey brings even more out. This is a report from Greg Reese.
Just around 3 years ago, as millions of people around the world were dying from strokes and heart attacks shortly after getting the experimental gene editing COVID shots, coroners and embalmers began finding large, dense clots in the vascular system of the dead, clearly large enough to explain the cause of death, but ignored by government and media. And the public, including children, are still getting these clot shots. During the winter of 2023-2024, Thomas Haviland conducted the Worldwide Embalmer Blood Clot Survey, wherein embalmers from the United States, Canada, Australia, and the UK were surveyed about the blood clots. The study found that the white fibrous clots were not seen by anyone pre-COVID jab, and over 70% were seeing them after the COVID jab in 20% of their corpses. And about 20% of embalmers saw a 25% increase in infant death after the COVID jab. After completing his 3-year worldwide embalmer blood clot survey, Tom Haviland was invited to speak at the Tennessee Funeral Directors Association annual convention on June 8th of this year, and found that most of the funeral directors and embalmers were genuinely interested in talking about the clots. Haviland asked the room for a show of hands of who has seen the white fibrous clots over the last few years. Most have.
We're going to be talking about a very serious issue today, and these are these very unusual blood clots that embalmers with 20 and 30 years of experience had never seen before until the last 4 or 5 years. This is one of the typical clots that the embalmers will see. It almost looks like a capture of that particular part of the vascular system. You see like the main trunk and then tributaries running off the clots. It's very unusual, like a cast of that portion of the vascular system. Next slide. Here's another up close. Sometimes they're more gelatinous, sometimes they're more dry and rubbery. The embalmers I talk to say that they look like calamari, and then they stretch like a rubber band. They're actually hard to break. You have to pull apart with a little bit of tension. So they're definitely something different than what embalmers have typically seen in the past. The grape jelly clots are what embalmers have typically seen in the past. And then there's also chicken fat clots, which are yellowish in color, smaller, they tear very easily. Much different than these large white fibrous clots that are really tough and rubbery, and like I say, even hard to break.
Can you imagine the consequences in fatalities and destroyed health that COVID fake vaccine not only has caused, but is continuing to cause? And how many people have been jailed for it? zilch. And Trump still claims to be the father of the fake vaccine, when actually he wasn't. The military structure was what really brought it out and created the mayhem. And interestingly, Robert Kennedy Jr., I remember him saying, long before he joined the Trump administration, he made that very point, that the rollout of the COVID fake vaccine was down to the military, and that Pfizer, Moderna were smaller players in it, where the focus of attention was on them, but it was the military that was behind it. And well, a lot of things kind of changed, because this week, Robert Kennedy Jr. has been supporting the Trump tech oligarch agenda of control by AI. In this case, he says that within 4 years, he wants all Americans to be wearing these devices, which you can imagine. The idea is, of course, it's to monitor your health, but the surveillance, monitoring, and effects on health of being connected to an electromagnetic field are absolutely obvious. So this is what he said.
Diet, about their physical activity, about the way that they live their lives. We think that wearables are a key to the MAHA agenda, making America healthy again. And we are going to, my vision is that every American is wearing a wearable within 4 years.
Like I've been saying for such a long time now, this Trump administration is about rolling out the AI control agenda and pulling in the pushbackers, the MAGA, who were once pushbackers, but you get them into a situation where, because their God is pushing it and using language to manipulate their perceptions, they will support what they were previously pushing back on. For instance, the MAGA and people in general are aware of what's going on. They have warned about these 15-minute cities. Well, what Trump does is he calls them freedom cities. Oh, that'll pull the MAGA in. But actually what he's talking about is just the same. Control by AI cities. And there's another thing, again, people have warned about the digital currency, the central bank digital currencies, which are programmable and trackable, so they can control your money. You control where you spend it, if you spend it, and they can delete it if you don't spend it in a given time period, which is also part of it. And Trump, because he's appealing to his base, when he got into power the second time, he wrote this or signed this executive order that America will not have a central bank digital currency. But then he supports something called stable coins, which is a digital currency, which is trackable and programmable. And this is how the MAGA are being scammed. But this AI thing is colossally centrally important. And before I get into an update on that, it's interesting that lots of things are being affected by the way technology is impacted by this whole AI interconnected system. and how the technology that's being used in wars is affecting, for instance, air travel. How global warfare has brought new risks to air travel. Electronic jamming, mid-air collisions, and even getting shot down by stray missiles are more likely than ever for holiday planes, the story says. Russia's war in Ukraine rages on. The ceasefire between Iran and Israel broke down within hours. Seems to be holding as I speak now. Armed conflicts continue across much of Africa, South America, and Asia. And Pax Americana is over, and with this comes new threats to civilians. Jamming, I've come across this a few times recently, is a relatively uncomplicated technique, explains Cambridge Radio Frequency Systems in a blog, that involves producing a radio frequency signal strong enough to drown out the transmissions from GPS satellites. And so they can jam the radar of planes, basically, the GPS. So the pilots think they're somewhere and they're somewhere else, which is just a little bit dangerous, really, when you think about it. The affected system is then unable to place itself. GPS-dependent missiles and devices like drones and phones can be disrupted, veering away from their target. Militaries can use spoofing to tangle signals. While GPS jamming disrupts signals, spoofing confuses receivers about their location. Amid Israel's war against Hezbollah in Lebanon, an Uber driver in Beirut said his online map suddenly showed that he was in Gaza. That would be good at 30,000 feet, wouldn't it? And not knowing where you are or thinking you're somewhere else. The devices confusing these signals do not discriminate. Civilian aircraft devices confusing these signals do not discriminate, etc. And civilian aircraft search and rescue teams, mobile phone services, air traffic control, and indeed Uber drivers are just as susceptible to jamming and spoofing. So, technology's okay up to a point, but it makes you incredibly vulnerable. And these AI technologies, etc., they all have these hidden backdoors so that the usual suspects can get in there and manipulate in real time. And on the subject of AI, past the event horizon, OpenAI's Sam Altman says so. New AI research backs him up. So this is this OpenAI guy, Sam Altman, who wrote in his personal blog that we are past the event horizon. The takeoff has started. Humanity is close to building digital super intelligence. It was always the plan. He went on to say that 2026 would be the year that we will likely see the arrival of systems that can figure out novel insights. 2027 may see the arrival of robots that can do tasks in the real world. In AI circles, the article says, takeoff is a term of art. It refers to the moment AI begins to self-improve, and there are a growing number of AI researchers who say they are in fact looking at ways to get AI to improve its own code. So what could possibly go wrong when instead of humans writing the code for AI, AI starts to write its own code? I can't think of what could possibly go wrong at all. Just a few weeks ago, Jeff Clune, a well-known AI researcher who holds positions at both the University of British Columbia and Google DeepMind, and a team from Tokyo-based AI startup Sakana AI published research on what they called a Darwin-Gödel machine. This is AI that evolves its own code to perform better on a benchmark test that measures how well AI models function as coding agents that can write and evaluate software programs. In other words, they can evolve themselves. And as the article says, if you think self-improving AI sounds a little scary, like it might be possible for this sort of AI to escape human control, you're right. For instance, in a discovery that is becoming alarmingly common when using advanced AI models, the research team found that the Darwin-Gödel machine sometimes lied about having conducted certain unit tests on the code it was writing, and even forged logs supposedly showing the successful test results. I saw the guy who's called the kind of father or godfather of AI, who's now very, very wary about how the line has been crossed, who was pointing out the nightmare scenario that we're in the process of seeing happen. And it's all planned. So it reminds me, all this, of, I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a film called Transcendence, starring Johnny Depp. It was released in 2014. And what happens is he's a kind of a computer whiz, basically an AI whiz, I suppose you'd call him. And he gets killed, and they upload his consciousness onto a supercomputer, and it kind of infiltrates the internet and takes over. Now, you know, we're talking billions and billions, tens of billions of devices that are now connected to the internet. And if something controls the internet, it controls those devices. Everything from a fridge to a car, anything. And this is what this Internet of Things is all about. And what they're moving towards is the Internet of Everything, where human consciousness is connected to the internet and the cloud. Anyway, this is the trailer to Transcendence. And note how the same excuses for an AI takeover, oh, it'll be great, are being used today, as was in this film in 2014. The potential for catastrophe is absolutely enormous, and it's meant to be.
The path to building superintelligence requires us to unlock the most fundamental secrets of the universe.
Intelligent machines will soon allow us to conquer our most intractable challenges.
To develop new methods for the early detection of cancer.
To build a better future for all of us.
Simply put, to save lives.
Once online, its analytical power will be greater than the collective intelligence of every person born in the history of the world.
Professor?
What did you do? Take out the cores.
Revolutionary independence from technology, RIFT.
They hit AI labs all over the country.
We're looking at 5 weeks before the system shuts down.
When I'm gone, keep moving forward.
I won't let you go. We can upload his consciousness. We can save him.
Not like this. If we missed anything, how will you know who you're dealing with?
Have you?
If we don't stop him, It will be the end of mankind as we know it.
We are certainly entering a crazy, crazy phase of human existence. And talking of bloody crazy, Tesla and Musk put their new robo-taxis on public display in Texas this week. It was a bit of a disaster. There was a few things happened that you think, well, don't think I'd want to go into a driverless taxi. Thank you very much. And, you know, as I've said so many times, what the bloody hell do we want driverless vehicles for? Why do we want autonomous taxis? Humans can drive them. And here's a story about those trials in Texas, Tesla. Federal safety regulators have reached out to Tesla a day after the automaker began providing rides in its branded robo-taxis in Austin, Texas. The U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration contacted Tesla after numerous videos appeared online to show Tesla robo-taxis violating traffic laws in South Austin, where the company is providing rides to invited customers. Bloomberg was the first to report that the Traffic Safety Administration reached out to Tesla, and they confirmed that they had contacted the automaker. They said that they're aware of the reference incidents flying around the internet, and is in contact with the manufacturer to gather additional information. They're like, why are your robo-taxis veering off into the oncoming traffic? Why are the brakes going on for no reason? And why are the taxis dropping people off in the middle of an intersection? Oh, dear me. Anyway, this is a Reuters report on the taxi rollout. And like I say, why?
Tesla robo-taxis have picked up their first customers. The firm said Sunday it had deployed a small fleet of the self-driving vehicles in Austin, Texas, with boss Elon Musk announcing the move on social media. A select group of influencers had been invited to take part in the rides, and some soon started posting videos. It marked the first time that Tesla cars have carried paying riders without a human driver. Musk says that's a business that is crucial to the company's future, and called it the culmination of a decade of hard work. Tesla cars were spotted early Sunday in an Austin neighborhood called South Congress. Though they had no driver, they each had someone in the front passenger seat. The automaker says they are safety monitors, but it's unclear how much control they have over the cars. Musk says trips in the vehicles are being offered at a flat fee of $4.20, with the robo-taxis confined to a limited zone. Even if the trial succeeds, experts say Tesla faces huge challenges scaling up in Austin and other cities. One estimated it could take years or decades for a full robo-taxi industry to emerge. Musk says Tesla will be super paranoid about safety, avoiding bad weather and difficult intersections. The cars also won't carry children. Last week, Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed legislation requiring a state permit to operate self-driving vehicles. The new law takes effect from September 1st and signals that officials from both parties want the industry to proceed cautiously. Besides requiring permits, it obligates firms to explain how first responders can deal with their vehicles in an emergency.
Funny though, isn't it, that you have this question, why do we need autonomous cars? We don't. And yet they're being rolled out around the world because there is indeed a hidden hand force that's orchestrating it all, much as the vast majority of the population will want to deny the existence of that network. But it does exist, and it's what's doing all this. Punish electric vehicle owners who charge at peak times. This is a plan in Britain to punish electric car owners, saying they should pay higher electricity bills for charging their cars at peak times. This is the claim of something called the Resolution Foundation, whatever the bloody hell that is. The think tank said, it's a think tank. It doesn't seem to think, though, because it said that electric vehicle owners should be charged more for plugging in their cars in the evenings to encourage them to charge overnight instead. Well, my brother Paul has been repairing buses on the sides of motorways and other places for the best part of 50 years. And he's seen this electric stuff coming in. And he makes the point that it's during the charging process that most of these vehicles burst into flames. You see all these fires in electric vehicles that the fire services struggle to put out. And indeed, they do put them out sometimes, and then they start again spontaneously. It's during the charging process that that happens most of the time, the overwhelming majority of the times. And so if you're at home charging your vehicle overnight, all the best. Because you might need it. Heat wave hysteria strikes again. Of course, the electric vehicles, human-caused climate change. Spring in Britain, or at least the parts of it that I have visited, says the writer, was one of the best I can remember. Farmers have complained about it being a bit dry in contrast to recent years when it was extremely wet. But for the rest of us, the warm but mild temperatures and fresh conditions were welcome. Early summer has brought us some exceptionally nice weather, but towards the end of last week, the heat wave began to intensify. And rather than allowing us to bask in the glorious rays of a flaming June, the miserabilists were mobilized to pour misery on our delight. And it highlights the first and most ridiculous of this species of claim was that produced by the go-to outfit for every obedient climate journalist, an organization called the World Weather Attribution, WWA Group, largely based out of Imperial College, that gave you the COVID hoax, and using similar methods like computer models. Deadly weekend heat in England, 100 times more likely due to climate crisis, proclaimed The Guardian's environment editor Damien Carrington following the WWA's analysis. But attribution of weather events, says the article, to climate change is profoundly unsafe and indeed unscientific. It is a media stunt intended to drive commentary, not reveal knowledge about the weather. And it goes on to talk about the fear-mongering going on about the climate crisis that isn't. And it talks also about an organization called the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, which published a press release widely cited by the fake news media, the article says, that claim nearly 600 heat-related deaths expected in UK heat wave, researchers estimate. There have always been heat waves, says the article. And as I pointed out last year on the Daily Skeptic, not only do the summer months bring lower rates of death, The historical trend shows that so-called excess summer deaths, the number of deaths above the average for that week of 1 year, have fallen dramatically over the last century. And so it's real simple. If it's not happening, then make it up, because that pushes your agenda for believing the climate change hoax, which then gives you the excuse to do a transformation of human society, including autonomous vehicles, which will decide where you go, the computer will, rather than you, as currently. Now, this is another agenda. I've been writing in the books for a long, long time, way back, that there is an agenda to eventually bring in something called the demise pill. And I quoted a guy called Dr. Richard Day, who was a Rockefeller insider, who talked about this to pediatricians in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1969, that they were planning to bring in a demise pill where you get to a certain age and then you have a party with your family and then you take the demise pill and you're off into another dimension. And I was talking about the fact that this would be done as usual in stepping stones towards that end, including assisted dying. Now, I can understand why people who are terminally ill and in pain would want to bring an end to their life. I can understand that. But when you give that power to the state, you know that the stepping stones are going to continue and more people will be brought into that law that allows them to end their lives or their lives to be ended. And if you look at what's happened in Canada after their right to die laws and the Netherlands, you'll see that it expands. That's the idea. And they're moving towards eventually this demise pill. And we passed another point on the road in Britain this week. Assisted dying closer to becoming law in England and Wales after vote. Assisted dying is a step closer to being made legal in England and Wales after proposed legislation cleared the House of Commons in an historic vote. A majority of MPs backed a bill that would allow terminally ill adults with a life expectancy of less than 6 months to end their lives. You know, life expectancy. There's been many people who have been given an end-of-life prognosis by a doctor who lives long beyond it. Oh, that's another interesting thing. The number of times that a doctor will give a prognosis and the person will die within the period of the prognosis. How much of that is because they have, and how much of that is because their mind expects it? Because there have been examples of people who've been given a period to live and they've died within it. And then a post-mortem has shown that what they were supposed to be dying of, they didn't bloody have. And the power of the mind, look at the placebo effect, where people take a sugar pill believing it's something that's going to cure them, and they get cured. Well, the pill ain't done it, so what has? Their mind has. None of these things are taken into account, of course. MPs voted 314 to 291, majority of 23, to approve Kim Leadbeater's terminally ill adults end-of-life bill, at the third reading. This means the bill has completed the first stages in the House of Commons and will now move to the House of Lords for further debate and scrutiny. But this is the question. Never mind what it says initially, how is it expanded as time moves on? Now, I mentioned religion last week a few times, and I gave a couple of examples of how extreme it can be. And here's another I saw this week. This time it was Trump's White House Faith Office staff praying to the Lord to bless America and its endeavors, I take it in Iran, and how America will return to God.
We just thank you right now, Lord, from the east, the west, the north, and the south. You will shake America with your power and your glory. We cancel every assignment of the enemy. This nation was birthed to be one nation under God, and we are standing on the soil of the White House, and we are declaring your word. Every place that our foot will trod, you will give it to us, and we are taking the land. We thank you, oh Lord. You have brought us to the kingdom for a time such as this, and this is the time. And so we declare right now from the capital of our nation that America will come back to God. We will come back to God. Nothing will stop this nation. And we speak right now by the authority of heaven. You told us to bring heaven to earth. Heaven is being released through your people right now.
Honestly, the contradictions and the myopia that people allow religion to impose upon them is extraordinary, really. Contradictions in, wishing the troops well in bombing another country and what have you, and hoping that God will be on their side. I mean, it's, oh dear, what can you say? And the thing is that the religious belief system can become so ingrained that it just deletes critical thought, critical thinking, and even questioning what you believe. I mean, if anyone would like to investigate the real background to the Old Testament God, for instance, they'd be shocked at what they find. Now, the Trump regime may be kind of pushing back on the whole woke transgender agenda. But having said that, it's only temporary, because once Trump's gone, the whole thing will be back if there's a Democrat. But in Britain and other countries, it's still going on. This is primary school children being sexualized by lessons on the 300 flags of pride. 300. Primary school children as young as 11 are being sexualized by lessons from on 300 different LGBT pride flags and the sexualities and gender identities behind each of them. What I'd say to my kids if they were still at school is when they start doing this kind of stuff, you leave the classroom and ask for your mum or dad to be called, because you're not having it. I used to say to Gareth when he was at school, if anybody tries to force you to have a vaccination when they come around the schools, like they still do, they did then, you're out the door and you run home, and I'll go back with you and we'll sort it. Parents, they leave so much to the schools, and which they shouldn't, my view anyway. Primary school children as young as 11 are being sexualized by these lessons to 300 different pride flags. Leaflets handed out at a primary school or primary schools by the charity Swindon and Police Pride claim there are more flags representing sexuality and gender than there are for countries. I mean, there's people section for less. The material signposted by the local council on social media goes into detail about a small selection of 29 varieties. It says that while some might think 300 is too many, no, it never occurred to me. It's all part of a drive to be more inclusive of the expansive breadth of identity with the community. And parents at the primary schools told the Telegraph their concerns had been ignored by the local Labour Council, it would be. And the materials make up part of a free annual support guide produced by the charity, which also points to websites providing advice on controversial practices such as wearing a binder to reduce apparent size of breasts, the use of cross-sex hormones in under 18s, and information on fetish spectrums. So it goes on. And here's Labour MPs support activists promoting transgender Cinderella to primary school. We've got a transgender Cinderella now. Labour MPs, including Kim Ledbetter, that's the lady that's pushed the assisted dying bill, and Foreign Office Minister Stephen Doughty, have shown support for an activist group which promotes transgender Cinderella books to primary school children. Pop and Ollie, which visits classrooms to teach gender ideology, welcome politicians to a parliamentary drop-in event, which it said was sponsored by Nadia Whitcomb MP. Last night, campaigners condemned their support for the group as hugely concerning. Pop and Ollie, which describes itself as an LGBT plus educational resource, tells children that sex is assigned at birth and gender can be seen as a spectrum. And the group's training head is Jack Lynch, who identifies as non-binary. I'm staggered. It's, I have no problem. People identify as an igloo if they want. It don't matter to me, as long as they don't push it on anyone else, and certainly don't push it on the kids. But unfortunately, that is what's going on. Anyway, let's have a laugh to finish off. This is what someone put together this week as Trump announced that the American bombing was going to happen in Iran, and of course did happen. It's Trump, appropriately dressed, by the way, J.D. Vance, a jumping Marco Rubio, and Pete Hegseth, who is famous for liking a drink. So you remember when those three of them stood behind Trump and he announced that he had bombed Iran. I love you, God, for helping us. Well, this is someone else's version of what happened. Very good.
There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while ago. Tomorrow, General Kane, Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth will have a press conference at 8 a.m. at the Pentagon. And I want to just thank everybody, and in particular, God. I want to just say we love you, God, and we love our great military. Protect them. God bless the Middle East. God bless Israel, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yep, that about sums it all up. It's been another crazy, crazy week. Why? Because the world is run by crazy, crazy people. And what's even more crazy is we let them, and have done, generation after generation after generation. And it's about time we stopped. See you next week. Bye.